the summer of 1985, the Carter family lived a life that many would envy, nestled in the tranquil embrace of Hollow Creek, a small town cradled by the Appalachian Mountains. The Carters were the kind of family that brought warmth to the community, a testament to kindness, hard work, and the simple joys of rural life. Their farmhouse, a sturdy structure built by Tom Carter's own hands, sat on a generous plot of land, bordered by dense woods that whispered secrets to those who dared to listen. The bubbling creek that meandered through their property was a constant source of laughter and adventure for their two children, Emily and Jacob. Emily, with her wild curls and bright blue eyes, was the dreamer of the family. She often spent afternoons lost in the pages of fantasy novels, her imagination painting worlds far beyond the confines of their small town. Jacob, younger by 3 years, was her shadow, always eager to join in her escapades. Together they explored the woods, built forts, and chased fireflies, their laughter echoing through the trees. Tom, a devoted father and husband, worked long hours in the local mill, while Mrs. Carter, whose name was Sarah, managed the household with grace and warmth. Yet, beneath her nurturing exterior, Sarah harbored a deep-seated curiosity about the world beyond the mundane. Sarah's fascination with the unknown was a secret she kept close to her heart. She often found herself drawn to the old folklore and legends of the region, spending hours in the town library poring over dusty tomes. Stories of witches, spirits, and ancient rituals captivated her, igniting a spark of wonder that she had long suppressed. However, she never acted on her curiosity, content to let the tales remain just that, tales. That was until a fateful night when Tom was away on business, leaving Sarah alone with the children. The night was unusually still, the kind of stillness that seemed to thrum with anticipation. As the moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape, Sarah felt an inexplicable pull toward the woods. The air was thick with an energy she couldn't quite place, and as she stood at the edge of the forest, the shadows danced enticingly, whispering her name. Overcome by a compulsion she couldn't resist, she grabbed a shovel and stepped into the darkness, the crunch of leaves beneath her feet, the only sound accompanying her. Guided by an unseen force, Sarah found herself at a clearing marked by 3 twisted trees, gnarled and ancient, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. It was here that she began to dig, the shovel striking something solid after a few desperate thrusts into the earth. Heart racing, she unearthed an ancient book, its cracked leather cover adorned with strange symbols. The title, The Shadow's Codex, sent chills down her spine. A voice echoed in her mind, urging her to open it, and before she knew it, she was caught in a trance, the world around her fading into the background. As she read from the book, the wind howled, thunder rumbled ominously, and lightning split the sky. The fire she had built crackled and roared, casting flickering shadows that danced around her. From the flames emerged a figure, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around it. It was a shadowy man, an embodiment of darkness that sent a wave of terror crashing over her. The ritual had awakened something ancient and malevolent, and as she realized the gravity of her actions, a sense of horror washed over her. When she finally snapped out of her trance, panic surged through her. She threw the book into the fire, desperate to erase the evidence of her folly, and fled back to the safety of her home, her heart pounding in her chest. But the damage had been done. The darkness had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. The next morning, the atmosphere in the Carter household shifted dramatically. Emily and Jacob awoke screaming, their faces pale and eyes wide with terror. They claimed a shadow man had invaded their room, a being that had loomed over them with a presence that felt cold and suffocating. Sarah tried to soothe them, but her own heart raced with fear as she remembered the figure from the night before. The once harmonious home was soon filled with tension, arguments brewing over trivial matters as the air thickened with an unshakable dread. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and shadows seemed to stretch and twist in the corners of their vision. As the days passed, the darkness grew bolder, feeding off the family's fear and despair. One night, as Sarah sat in the living room, a bone-chilling scream pierced the air. She rushed to Emily's room, only to find her daughter convulsing, her eyes black as coal. The voice that emerged from her lips was not Emily's, but that of something ancient and sinister, cold and menacing. "You summoned me," it hissed, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. Desperation clawed at Sarah's heart as she realized the gravity of the situation. She needed help, but who could she turn to? The local historian, Mr. Thompson, had always been a source of knowledge about the town's folklore. She called him, her voice trembling as she explained the bizarre occurrences. But before he could arrive, tragedy struck. He died in a freak accident on his way to their home, leaving Sarah feeling utterly alone and hopeless. With no one to turn to, Sarah threw herself into research, determined to save her family from the clutches of the darkness she had unwittingly unleashed. She spent hours poring over old texts, seeking ancient rituals and protective charms that might help her. She scattered salt across the thresholds of their home, hung iron horseshoes above the doors, and burned sage to cleanse the air. But the darkness was relentless, laughing at her feeble attempts to protect her family. One evening, as the shadowy figure grew stronger, it began to manifest physically. It would appear in the corners of rooms, its hollow eyes boring into their souls, sending waves of terror coursing through them. Jacob, the younger child, began sleepwalking, often found standing in the woods near the 3 twisted trees, his expression vacant and lost. Emily's possession worsened. She would lash out violently, her strength unnaturally powerful for a child her age. Sarah felt as if the very walls of their home were closing in, the darkness creeping closer with each passing day. Time was running out, the shadows were winning, and Sarah could feel the weight of despair crushing her spirit. She knew she had to confront the darkness head-on. Armed with the cursed book, which she had managed to retrieve from the ashes of the fire, she returned to the woods one last time. The trees loomed above her, shadows stretching like fingers reaching for her. The shadowy figure awaited her, its form more solid than before. A twisted grin plastered across its face. "Did you think you could escape me?" it taunted, its voice a chilling echo that reverberated through the trees. Sarah steeled herself, her heart pounding in her chest. She had come too far to turn back now. Using a combination of salt, iron, and fire, she confronted the entity, reciting the incantation she had found in her research. Her voice trembled, but there was a newfound determination behind her words. The shadowy figure writhed and hissed, its form flickering like a dying flame. It lunged at her, but she stood her ground, throwing salt and iron at it, her heart racing. With a cry of defiance, she threw the book into the fire once more, ensuring it was completely destroyed this time. The flames roared, consuming the darkness that had plagued her family for far too long. As the darkness retreated, the woods fell silent. The oppressive weight that had hung over Hollow Creek lifted, replaced by a sense of peace that washed over Sarah. She stumbled back to the farmhouse, her heart pounding, but the air felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. The shadows that had once filled their home dissipated, leaving behind only the memories of the horror they had endured. In the days that followed, the Carter household began to heal. The laughter of Emily and Jacob returned, filling the air with a warmth that had been absent for so long. Sarah vowed never to dabble in the unknown again, having learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. The family grew closer, the bond forged in the fires of adversity stronger than ever. Years later, the 3 twisted trees still stood in the woods, a grim reminder of the curse that had once plagued Hollow Creek. The townsfolk avoided the area, claiming it felt wrong even on the brightest days. And though the Carters never spoke of that summer, they kept a jar of salt and an iron horseshoe by the door, just in case. Some doors, they had learned, should never be opened. The shadows waited for the curious lurking just beyond the veil of the known, ready to ensnare those who dared to seek out the darkness.